we're just building the truck. We're just gonna put whatever they want on it. Variety of effects, sensors, commercial and defense, but we're, 95% of our time spent on defense.
The primes are now coming in and say, if you want modularity, it should cost more.
Exactly. If it's one person per drone, then ultimately you've only won half the battle. You plan a mission and release these, and then you don't even have to control them. You're just hands off. Got to be persistent, right? Once they go underwater, they're not really controllable, right? It's just the nature of underwater comms. It's challenging, right?
My name is Dan Meiji, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Firestorm. And this week on the Drone Wars podcast, we're joined by Nelson Mills, CEO and co-founder of VATN Systems. He's going to tell us how undersea vehicles are changing the world. All right, Nelson, one of the OG Decisive Point investors like myself. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here, and always fun chatting with you.
I know, man. I feel like we've done like 10 of these with other people, so now it's nice to just do one with me and you.
Yeah, definitely. It's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So Nelson, tell us a little bit about your story, because it's very unique, and I think people would like to learn about it.
Yeah. I had a pretty different, exciting childhood, I guess, depending on your viewpoint. But grew up homeschooled on a sailboat in the Caribbean. My parents hated the cold, loved sailing, made the sacrifices they needed to make in their lives, and saved up enough money to go do it. So we ended up pretty much every winter going out and sailing all over the Caribbean. And so from a young age, I was very, very much involved in boats and loved everything water related, and it just carried over into my life in general, work life and adult life. I ended up getting into the startup space in 2014. Yeah, I dropped out of a PhD in political science, moved out to Utah, far away from the water.
Utah, my favorite nautical place in the country.
I know, right? I know. But I was building a software company there. We're working on a software company, a subsidiary of a larger firm, and that was fun. But I could only do so long in the desert as a former sailor, So left there, went to Seattle, started working on electric boats, and then from there to Rhode Island, working on hydrofloating electric boats. Decided to get my MBA while I think through companies to start. Been working on a maritime tech company idea for a while, but somehow got sucked into venture capital. So ended up doing that for 3 years, and was finally like, I need to do something. I need to start a company. Investing's fun. It's a good time. Learned a ton. Made great capital connections. But at the end of the day, what I love the most is building hardware, building companies. So in 2023 launched that, and I met Tommy from Decisive Point. He's like, hey, I want to build a company in the underwater space, and started digging in with him on that, and he connected us with customers, and just realized there was a huge opportunity, white space here, right? It's 15 years behind other drone markets. I think it's just super underdeveloped, and I think part of that is it's a super challenging space. But I understood maritime. I brought in co-founders that understood maritime. My brother, and he's former boat captain, did a lot of R&D work, and then our CTO Jeff Manchester, who has been working. He's been a marine engineer for a couple decades, and then Dan Hendricks, our chief revenue officer from who was working at Decisive Point at the time, and was a former SF dive officer. And with that group, we decided we were going to tackle this problem, and it's been full speed ahead since. So 6 months later, we had our first vehicle in the water. A few months away from going to production, basically. So with our first vehicles.
Nelson, walk us through the products you have, and share one of your really cool names you have for them.
Yeah. So our vehicle is the VATN Scalable S6. It's a 6-inch diameter man portable underwater vehicle that can go pretty good distance. We're about to announce some product updates that are going to be exciting and better than what's on the website. So that's cool. but it can carry a variety of payloads. We're just building the truck. Customers can put whatever they want on it. Variety of effects, sensors, and both commercial and defense. But we're 95% of our time spent on defense. And then we're building a larger vehicle called the S12, which is 12.75-inch diameter, which we'll launch more details on that next year. But the core of what we're doing is building our inertial navigation system, because that's the kind of big cost blocker in undersea. So we're verticalizing kind of that part of the BOM, which allows us to go as cheap as we're going. And then we're building our single and multi-agent autonomy, which are also both super underdeveloped in the undersea space. And that's making this a true force multiplier, right? Like, it's great if you build thousands of drones, but if you can't, if it's one person per drone, then ultimately you've only won half the battle, right? You need to really know how to make it easy to use, easy to train people on, and make it easy for one or a small group of people to deploy tens, hundreds, thousands.
Okay, so two threads I want to kind of pull on here, right? As you tell us
Yeah.
more about the product. First is GPS denied, right? That's now the
Mhm.
table stakes for any type of near peer contest, and I think even in, let's call it, asymmetrical conflicts, you're probably going to
Mhm.
see GPS jammers and spoofers because they're so cheap. And then the second is, let's talk about the cognitive load that you're trying to basically take off of the operator, right?
Mhm.
So talk to us about how important solving that first problem with GPS is, right?
Yeah, and that this is part of the challenge of underwater, right? It's just by its nature, it's GPS denied. You go 1 inch underwater, not even, you go half an inch underwater, and you're no longer getting a reliable GPS signal, right? So we can't mess around, we can't pretend. Um, you know, we have GPS or play around with GPS, right? Once you're underwater, you're just denied. So it's fundamental to what we're doing, and it's challenging, right? Like, it's particularly using low cost MEMS based gyroscopes. It's a difficult thing. We've had really good luck, um, and have a very talented team of GNC engineers building an awesome navigation system that's enabling this undersea. But even there's also the secondary challenge of, like, initializing your system, right? So we often initialize with GPS, but we also are now moving towards initializing without GPS, right? So that means, like, there's, maybe you're starting the vehicle starting in a location with GPS and you're sending it undersea and it's going to place without GPS, but you might also start in a location without GPS. And then what do you do? How do you initialize the vehicle, right? And you need to initialize off another platform or platform's navigation system, right? And so that's why all these nav systems will ultimately be, like, interconnected, right? We might have to initialize off the navigation system of a destroyer or CCM, right? Which is, as CCM's a Navy special warfare combatant vessel. And if you don't have one part of that navigation stack, the whole chain will fall apart, right? Because not every vessel can have the navigation system or quality of navigation system that a destroyer has, or something like that. It just doesn't fit, and the cost is prohibitive. So I think that's something people sometimes forget about or need to talk about more, is, like, how do you ensure that kind of chain of um, navigation, position, and timing, right? Because no matter what you're doing, you need some sort of um, global nav, at least for part of the time. Of course, once you have some method of acquiring a target, then you can move towards more of, like, a local nav, or relative bearing. But yeah, it's a huge challenge.
And so, like, how important is for you when you build a product, right? To make something that is incredibly complicated that you just explained seem like seamless to an end user. You know what I mean? Like, how do you surprise and delight them with that product experience?
Yeah, it's a core to what we do is ease of use, right? Like, we've trained enlisted sailors, Marines in 20 minutes to use our vehicles, and, and have great success. And the for a lot of the kind of competitive systems out there, they would have to go through multi-week training programs in order to become proficient on those systems. And then it's going to be a group of them, three, four of them operating and deploying them, right? And our goal is that this can be someone's part-time job or just another kind of system they qualify on, right? And maybe once a year they have a 30-minute brush up, but they're otherwise, good to go to operate and deploy systems like ours. And that is massively important, and they shouldn't have to deal with or think about navigational algorithms or stuff like that, right? It's just like, hey, you point and click in an existing C2 system that they're familiar with, and it goes off and does its missions. You choose your options, and it should be clear to anyone who's used a smartphone before. And that, to your point, it's massively important that the complexity of the system, the algorithms, and the software doesn't come through in the actual user interface.
So that's a great kind of transition to the second question I have around the cognitive load, right? So you said that you can't have one person running one vessel, right? It sounds like you guys have designed that as part of just the operations in general, right? So give us a use case. Is there a scenario where Dan Meiji is sitting at his laptop, he hits go, and 40 of these get shot off a CCM, and then I'm controlling them? Like, walk me through like a use case.
Yeah, 100%. There is a use case where you're on a small boat or a beach or something like that, and you plan a mission and release these, and then you don't even have to control them. You're just hands off. 'Cause that's the other part about our vehicles is once they go underwater, they're not really controllable, right? It's just the nature of underwater comms. You can send new waypoints, you can send stop mission, you can send certain commands, but you're not going to be controlling them, right? They're fully autonomous, and that's ultimately our goal is that this can be shoot and forget. Whether you're collecting data with them or creating some sort of effect, the user doesn't have any cognitive load once they press that go button and once they put it in the water or it releases from its launch mechanism. And yeah, exactly to your point, they can do that with one vehicle, they can do that with 10, potentially 100 more or more, right? That's what we're working on, and I think is important in every domain, as right? And as you guys are working on too.
Drone Wars is recorded from Firestorm's global HQ in San Diego. From our custom-built studio inside one of our hero products, a modular industrial-grade manufacturing facility designed to be deployed anywhere in the world within 24 hours for on-demand drone production. Each week on the podcast, we bring you cutting-edge insights from top industry leaders, sharing the breakthroughs and technologies they're working on, the hard lessons they've learned, and bold predictions that they have for the next 5 to 10 years in autonomous systems and advanced manufacturing. Enjoying the show so far? Then be sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, back to the show.
How important is modularity for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's another massively important aspect of this, right? We don't need 1,000 systems for 1,000 different missions, right? We need common interfaces in a small set of systems that can carry 1,000 different payloads, right? Like our goal is that we're creating the app store, right? We have an interface which meets a certain standard. It's not necessarily that we're creating that standard, but it's a standard in the military that you build your payload to that standard and it fits and can operate from our vehicles, right? And that just opens up adaptability for the user. The user doesn't have to learn a bazillion different platforms for different mission sets, and the user can also take 4, 5, 6 different sensor and effects payloads with them, and only one, say, truck or 2 trucks, right? And it just gives more adaptability and ability to control the mission.
I want to hear what you have to say about this. I was walking Capitol Hill a couple weeks ago, and I'm meeting with a bunch of folks from the House and the Senate, and a bunch of the MLAs, right? in there were telling me the primes are now coming in and say, if you want modularity, it should cost more. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yeah, do modular systems cost more? I mean, there are, everything has its trade-offs. There might be some increases in costs and complexity, but it's a massive, I don't think it's a massive increase in cost. And we see it as just a core feature, right? It's not a choice of not modular or modular. It's just like modular. That's what we offer and that's what we do. And I think it's not something that's going to double the price of anything. It adds a little bit more components, adds a little bit more R&D, but I think it's all within the bounds of achievable and shouldn't cost all that much more. My general sense.
So basically, like, instead of buying one system for each mission, you're going to buy one that's going to be able to do multiple missions, and you're going to have a lower cost of ownership. That's what you're saying.
For sure, there's that part of it too, right? Yeah, yeah. There's a lower training, lower maintenance, less complexity of owning all these different systems. All of that does reduce your overarching costs, unit economics over time. Even if the individual component is a little more, which it really doesn't, even on that front, I think it's relatively minor how much that increased the cost. But to your point, it just reduces logistics complexity massively.
Yeah. All right. So, Nelson, tell us a little bit about, like, if you were going to give younger Nelson some advice, as a CEO, founder, co-founder, what would you tell yourself before you started this journey? What's the advice people should take from you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, still figuring it all out. It's been such a whirlwind, but I think I think there's core skills that have served me well. If you want to start a company and you're not an engineer, work closely with engineers, understand how they think, what they do. You have to be able to speak the technical language and engage on that, at least on some level. I think that's really, this whole experience has reinforced that for me. As a founder, you have to understand and know everything that's going on in your company, and on some level, like, deeply involved. It's not that you're micromanaging, but you have to have the kind of awareness of mind and space to understand every component of what's going on with your business, and help drive that and shape that in the right direction. That's massively critical in the first, I think, few years of a company. And I think it's very difficult to relinquish that to other people, even to co-founders, right? You have to be deeply ingrained with what they're doing and what they're up to. So I think that's been an interesting kind of perspective and lesson, and I think it makes you ultimately a much better fundraiser too, right? Like, you go and pitch an investor, and you as the CEO or co-founder, you need to understand all components of that business. And it's just as true for the CTO and the COO or whoever else your co-founders are, right? You all should have that deep understanding of the business and where it's going. I think other advice, I think, it's just kind of cliche stuff of, like, you got to be persistent, right? My last round took a lot longer than I hoped it would. And I think as founders, we've all experienced that. You got to hear a lot of no's. You got to be prepared for a lot of windy, twisty roads that don't go where you want. And if you want to take the venture capital route, or even just on the customer side, you're going to hear there's going to be a lot of days where it's slow, where you hear a lot of no's, and you just got to be able to persist through that. And this experience, I always heard that. I was like, oh, that's just kind of, like, everyone says that, but it's super true. It's the fundamental to the experience of being a founder.
You can't take it personally too, right?
No, yeah, you can't.
Yeah, it only needs one. You only need one person to say yes, right?
Exactly. And I think it does grind in you after a while. So I mean, I've definitely been there where it's felt more personal, or the experience hasn't been great, and where you get angry at the no. But you also have to be able to accept that, hey, this is this is the way it is, and particularly as a former investor, I've been there, where I've said no to a lot of people.
Right. All right. So Nelson, where does your industry go in the next 5 or 10 years, right? Look into your crystal ball and tell us what the future holds.
Yeah, I think the underwater space is going to rapidly expand and transform, right? I think we've been really stagnant in the development of underwater drones and vehicles, and I think there's a massive opportunity here, and I think VATN in particular is going to take a leading role in the underwater space. That's my goal. I'm building an underwater autonomy prime and trying to really own the subsea systems. I think, but I think we're going to see more entrants and competition in the space, and I think at the end of the day, that's good, right? It's core, like undersea is core to the strategy of the U.S. in the Pacific and in other domains, and we need to do more to make sure that we can meet any future conflict. And we're not going to do it with submarines alone. It's just the ocean's too big, and we build them too slowly.
Great. I really appreciate that insight, man. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see as we transition from big exquisite systems to big exquisite systems supported by, massive numbers of lower cost attritable systems, right?
Yep, exactly. I mean, I'd say all of these drones, robotic warfare markets, it's a process, right? Like, it's not like we're going to drones fighting drones overnight, or drones replacing subs or ships or airplanes overnight, right? It's going to be phased. It's going to be drones supporting these manned exquisite systems, and then we'll continue to transform from there. We probably can't even all predict where these markets are fully going to go, how people are going to use them. Just the innovation we've seen in Ukraine, right, has been awesome, and it's opened a lot of eyes. Once you're actually there in the weeds, people get real creative.
Totally, man. And they just solve problems.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me.
So Nelson, if people want to follow you or reach out to you, what are the best ways to get a hold of you?
Yeah, feel free to follow myself or VATN Systems on LinkedIn or Instagram. Check out our website. There's contact information there. You can request a demo and follow along or sign up for a newsletter.
Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. Each week, we bring you fascinating conversations with leaders shaping the future of air, sea, land, and space technologies. Catch new episodes every Tuesday wherever podcasts can be found. Until then, we'll see you next time.